Don't forget that I started out as a hard-headed, ultra-realistic type of journalist. We've got to be sticklers for absolute fact. The strangest thing, in fact, that ever happened to me personally on these films here was when I went up a little defile near Cradle Hill, at the top of Cradle Hill, where there's an army rubbish refuse dump. And I went along this little track because I could see clearly, or fairly clearly anyway, the glowing to my right, glowing to my left. That appeared to be circular, that appeared to be cylindrical, and in front of me a rather large light that lit up the trees in front of me. And I was drawn, because it appeared to be the nearest of the three, I was drawn towards the light in front, and I thought, well, I'm pretty certain that's UFO. I couldn't explain what that was. It wasn't anything conventional, and I hastened towards it. But then I was aware of being lifted off the ground, literally, and I was aware of some energy coming from the lights at either side, which had closed in rather frighteningly. But I wasn't frightened. I just teetered in mid-air, if you like, several feet up, obviously, and I just couldn't feel any pressure under my legs at all. And I'd stopped running, and my legs were simply gangling about like this without any foundation to tread upon. And this went on, perhaps I was hovering in this sort of fashion, and yet still being propelled slowly forward for a good half minute or more. And that is gospel truth.
Did you fall down?
It was the most amazing experience I ever had. No, I didn't fall. I was simply lowered very gently back to the earth.
The Flying Saucer Review is the main journal in Britain which collects all the data about all strange things. For instance, figures like this, humanoid figures. This one, I think, reported from Finland. Extraordinary details of saucers coming down, people being affected by rays. The magazine is full of teleportation, stories of cars being moved from one place to another. Now, Charles Bowen is the editor of this. You spent years collecting all this data. What's it all about?
I'd like to know what it's all about. I've been involved with this myself for something like 12 years, closely, as editor of the review. We get reports from all over the world, particularly from South America, everywhere, practically.
Is there any pattern?
There are small patterns from time to time, small patterns in visual features of these alleged occupants of these flying saucers or UFOs, call them what you will. People report these things. A lot of them obviously think they have seen something real. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. The fact remains that it is largely a nocturnal phenomenon, and people who often report them are people who are out working at night. Doctors on call, nurses, police, soldiers, all people like this. A lot of them very highly responsible people. A lot of them people of high intellectual standard. Now all this leads you to ideas. You begin to get ideas about this subject. And ideas are, what are they doing? What is going on? We haven't a clue what is going on. But what we do know is that the people are very honest, usually, who describe these things. Very seldom do we come across deliberate hoaxes. I mean, there's no point in it because they begin to look ridiculous the moment they start speaking about these things. And we suspect that the UFOs, which bring them, are controlled. Whether or not these creatures that are seen are the control of the UFOs, or whether they are merely projections from them, is another matter. The way they behave, the way they sort of float over the surface of a muddy field, and all this seems to suggest that they may be projections which are from the object into the minds of the beholders. This is one possibility. Then what is going on? We don't know. Are they some sort of attempt to control human beings? Do they select simple people for this purpose? Select them and work on them. The idea of control is not something new in the world of the human beings. I mean, ancient religions have all sought to suggest that there is control from their deity. Jehovah and the Israelites, Allah, other people, control their people. So the idea of control is nothing new, but this is a modern form of control in a modern frame of reference. Are these things coming from extraterrestrial sources? There's no real proof that they are.
Staffordshire's had a whole crop of flying saucers. Spots in the sky, lights in the sky, strange things. But the strangest of all was seen one day over this cottage. Mr. and Mrs. Rustenberg were living there, quietly, out in the country. And, well, you just tell me what you saw.
Well, it was one ordinary day. I was waiting for my husband to come home from work, and my two sons went to Seifert to school, and I was getting changed, and I heard this terrific noise. It was just like a giant cauldron of water being poured onto a fire, a shh sort of noise, you know. And my first reaction was, oh, the children. I thought maybe a plane was crashing or something like that. And I slipped my jumper on and went outside to find my two sons lying flat on the ground in the garden in front of the house, shouting, "Mummy, Mummy, there's a flying saucer." Well, naturally, I just said, "Come on, don't be stupid. Come in the house." But felt sort of a strange sensation. Wended my way up the side of the house to where we had a pump where we used to get all our water from, and automatically looked up to see this, all I can describe, this huge Mexican hat. It was stationary, this thing, and it was bright silver in colour, and it had a dome. It was tilted to sort of, I could see the occupants in it.
You saw people in it?
I saw people in it. There were two people in there. These people were beautiful people. That's the only way I can describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob, just like the old kings. You used to see photographs of the old kings. And the colour of the hair was golden. Now, I was really...
What were they dressed in?
They had a sort of a polo neck jumper affair, like a ski top suit, in pale blue. Now, these people weren't sat one behind the other. They were sat together, but this, whatever it was tilted so that I could see them and they could see me.
Were you looking at them through windows, through portholes, or
no, not portholes. It was just sort of like a cockpit, I suppose, that had this perspex or glass or whatever it was. They could see me anyway, and I could see them. And they had beautiful faces. I shall never forget their faces as long as I live. Their foreheads seemed to be a bit larger than, you know, the bottom of their faces as normal people you would expect to see. But maybe this was just whatever they had round their heads, which was like a transparent fishbowl. And they just looked, and I was absolutely paralytic with fear. I couldn't move, although my mind was ticking over. And they looked so sympathetic that I was just mesmerized for what seemed to be, ages, but it could have only been seconds. And I turned to sort of look down at the boys, was unaware that they were with me because I was so absorbed. And the next thing, I looked up and it was gone.
How low had it been?
It had been the height, I couldn't tell you. But the house that you've seen, it was just on top of the roof. It was hovering on top of the roof.
How big was it compared with the size of the house?
It swallowed the whole circumference of the roof. I couldn't see. The roof was completely blotted out. The chimneys I couldn't see. All I could see was this massive object that I described as like a Mexican hat without the bubbles.
And then it flew away sideways or upwards?
No, I didn't see. I just looked up and it had gone. But I assume it went straight up, because for a short while after in the sky I looked around and I said to my two boys, "Where, can you see anything? Can you see anything?" And they said, "There it is, Mum," and they pointed up, and I watched it. It was just like a little cotton reel in the sky, and it circled us 3 times. It went round 3 times, and then it just shut off, and that was it. When I started to analyze my myself afterwards. I feared that I might have had an hallucination. But then I knew I hadn't had, because my sons were so sure about what they'd seen and what I'd seen. And it went through my mind that it was a secret weapon from Russia. And then I thought, well, it can't be that, because if they had something like that, they wouldn't need to fear anybody or anything.
Were you scared by it? Did you run indoors?
Oh, I was petrified. I couldn't move. I couldn't move a muscle. I was paralyzed with fear. But now I wouldn't be. Because now, when I look back, you know, I think, what an amazing thing to have happened, and for me to have seen it.